Glenn, can you hear me? Glenn? Okay. Are we live then? Yeah. All right. Good. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Okay, good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 2024 edition of the Township of Muskoka Lakes Planning Committee meeting. And I call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. Confirm that we have 9 out of 10 councillors present, with 2 attending virtually. So we have a quorum. I also confirm we have some, we now have quorum, full quorum. And we have confirmed we've got the CAO, the clerk, the Director of Development Services and Environment Sustainability, and some other members of staff. Public input was invited through the email township, the email for the township. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and the YouTube channel. And by participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. There is no supplementary agenda today, and I would ask any members of committee if they have any disclosure for pecuniary interests. Very good. Seeing none, our invited guests will have the standard 5 minutes to speak for the public session of the meeting. And so now let us get right to the agenda. The first item today is a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment, and I believe that is Ms. Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. They are just promoting me to a host on the Zoom so I can share my PowerPoint. So just bear with us a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. First applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B024ML and zoning.
It's not working.
Hello? It's on.
Okay, that answered why, so the mic doesn't fit.
There's no microphone.
Yeah, we're working on it. It is in the plan, I presume, to replace that microphone.
Might have to come to council. Okay.
I don't think that'll take long.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. The first applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B0524ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 1024 in the name of Bracken. The subject lands do not have a municipally assigned address. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent and zoning sketch on page 20 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of concurrent consent application B0524ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 1024 is to create one new lot and to permit the resultant lots to have 40 feet of frontage where 50 feet is required. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 22 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Sarah Campbell, planner at the District Municipality of Muskoka, stating that district staff would not be opposed to the applications, provided that confirmation is received from Canadian Pacific Railway that all concerns respecting rail-related noise, vibration, and safety have been addressed, and that the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement any requirements to their satisfaction, or that a noise impact study and vibration study be completed by a qualified professional, and the following be implemented as conditions of consent. That each of the severed and retained lots shall require separate individual water and sewer service connections from the mains to the street lines, and that the lands be subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, as amended, respecting the provision of municipal services between the District Municipality of Muskoka and the owner applicant. A letter of objection was received from Sharon Trotman, area property owner, expressing that they are not in support of the creation of a new lot, citing concerns regarding tree clearing that would result from the proposal, location of driveways, precedents, and questions surrounding what the proposed dwellings will look like. Following the circulation of comments to committee, comments were received from Ken Becking, the township's director of operational services, stating that there are some concerns regarding the drainage around Curry Street and expressing that adequate provisions for surface drainage should be made. To address this comment, staff recommend that an additional condition be imposed to require the owner to enter into a site plan agreement to address, among other things, concerns surrounding drainage. Also following the circulation of comments to committee, a letter of objection was received from Carly Pierce and Patrick Klaxa, abutting property owners to the northwest of the subject property. Concerns within this letter include the potential removal of trees for the proposed development envelopes, congestion, overcrowding, increased noise pollution and disruption of wildlife in the area, and a discrepancy in the property lines, which leads to the belief that the proposed development will be closer to their home than what has been shown on the submitted consent sketch. I can read this submission in full at the request of committee. The proposed exemption is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that consent application B0524ML Bracken be approved subject to standard conditions of consent, that confirmation be received from Canadian Pacific Railway that all concerns respecting rail-related noise, vibration, and safety have been addressed, and that the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement any requirements to their satisfaction, or that a satisfactory noise and vibration study be conducted by a qualified professional, and that the study be implemented to the satisfaction of the township, which may include the requirement for, amongst others, a consent agreement, site plan agreement, and/or zoning bylaw amendment to implement any recommendations of the study if necessary, and that an exemption be granted to permit the resultant lots to have 40 feet of frontage, and that an additional condition be imposed to require the owner to enter into site plan agreement with the township to address, among other items, drainage concerns. Staff have further recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 1024 Bracken be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowder. I believe the agent is Ms. Ledger. Good morning, Ms. Ledger. And as you well know, you have 5 minutes.
Yes, good morning, Chair and committee members. Terry Ledger, 167 Medora Street, Port Carling, P0B1J0. I'm the agent for the applicant. It's basically the creation of a new lot. We meet all the other requirements for the lot, including area. It's really just the frontage that we're short on. This is sort of an opportunity to create an extra housing lot on town services, which is per provincial policy and district policy and municipal policy. So I think in that way, it's a good thing. I do appreciate neighbors' concerns, especially in this area. As we know, Curry Street has not had the best history. But I do believe this is an opportunity for some housing. We are all, the owners and myself are all fine with the conditions as noted, aware of the railroad, etc. And I am here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other people wishing to speak in support of this application? And do we have anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this application? And if they do, you can come up or identify themselves online. Good morning. We're very well, thanks. If you could state your name and address and
people to do this for me.
we need your name and address. So
Anthony Domenici, 1024 Curry Street, would be across the street and to the left of the property. Terry, I heard you. I know Terry well. Loud and clear. My biggest concern is when we were driving over this morning would be said that this is part of what the provincial government's looking for, to have additional housing, and my comment is that I don't think that's really the road that we want to go down today. It's an 80-foot lot. It says 50. We want to stick with 50. If we want to start setting precedent on the street, where do we go from there? This is my cottage. I have 300 feet. Am I going to say, okay, I'm going to tear it down and I'm going to make 8 lots now on the water and come in here and sit and argue with you people? And so my comment is that the gentleman owns an 80-foot lot and he should stick with an 80-foot lot and do what he can do with it. There's obviously there's profit in it for him, which is what he would be looking for, to have it split into 2. And I'm going to strongly oppose that we do anything on that street. And as Terry, you said, we haven't had the best history on Curry Street. I think it's time we turn it around. We're doing what we can. We've got families in there that really care. And we want to hold the road if we can, and just so strongly object. And I will speak for. But there's 5 of us here today, and a couple that couldn't make it. And I think that is it fair to say that we all object? Yeah. So we're in objection. You've got 6 people here today that strongly object.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else online wishing to speak against this in opposition? Is there anybody up? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi there. My name is Megan Fangrad. I'm one of the family members of the owners of 1030 Curry Street. We're right next to Anthony, who just spoke. We just wanted to really reiterate what he said. We feel that we don't want that lot to be divided into 2. There's also, a fear of what do those turn into? Are those going to be rental properties? Are people going to be coming and going, to make some money? And there's already a bit of a parking issue on the street where the street's always full of cars. And I don't see there being a lot of parking spaces available when you separate those 2 lots. And it's difficult for us to get in with our boats and our trailers to even back into our own driveway. And if there's going to be more and more cars littered on the street, it just becomes more chaotic the more houses that are there. And we just believe that it would depreciate the value the more that we start making these tiny little city lots on this road right on the water. And, it's a concern for just more and more people littered on the same road that's already so busy. I have a young son and another one on the way. And the kids, when we walk into town, it's a really busy road and we don't really want it getting any busier than it has to.
All right. Thank you very much. And do we have anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Please state your name, address, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Brian Brown. I live at 1032 Curry Street. We are very opposed to this development. If I wanted to live in a subdivision like Toronto, I would have moved to Toronto. This being such a small lot, like I remember building my garage and I went through all the hoops that there's a percentage of property for a percentage of the size of the building. And from what I remember, that's not going to be anywhere near what it should be. But other than that, and like Megan said, we got traffic problems there all the time. And we just don't need another building. I don't have a problem with one house in there, but two, it's not right. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And yes, please come up to the podium.
Hi there, my name is Patrick Clutcha. We're the ones that wrote the letter. We're right next door to the adjacent property.
And
Our address is 1015 Curry Street, P0C180. So we purchased the property in October of 2023 last year. We still have the original MLS photos taken of the lot, which was deceiving at the time because they were taking photos of the adjacent property, basically showing that it was part of our property that we purchased. So we still have records of those if you would like to see them. And this is like the overview of our property here in the blue line. I've since recently got utility locates for our property for some upcoming landscaping work that we want to do. We're upgrading our hydro service and moving our propane tank. So we have some excavation to do. When I got the locate, it showed that our house was encroaching over the line of that property currently. I know this isn't accurate. We don't have a proper land survey plan. We did ask for that when we purchased the property and the owners declined our request. So that was a concern for us. Basically, this is our first home. It's our primary residence. We decided to move. We originally we lived in Orangeville, lived in Woodbridge. We wanted somewhere more quiet. So we decided to purchase this property here. We loved the feeling of the street. It felt nature, the water's obviously right across and the boat launch and everything. We were able to see the congestion of the street with parking and boats and all the signage. With these size of homes, we're assuming people are going to have 2 vehicles. So there's going to be an additional 4 vehicles of parking there and an unknown amount of people. Whether it's a duplex or a rental, like people have made comments about, as a concern for us. And yeah, I mean, basically the way that these lots were positioned was as one family owned everything and they separated off to a known real estate developer with plans of building without our consent or knowledge. So it's all come to a surprise for us. Honestly, seeing the posting on the tree, we're obviously opposed to it greatly. And yeah, like I said, we have our letter that if you would like to read it in full, that basically summarizes a lot of our points. I just wanted to speak in person and just say that we're very unhappy with the decision and we feel like it could just change the street. There's another vacant lot beside us and we don't know if it happens here, it could happen there, and it could be a domino effect down the street like was mentioned earlier by Anthony, one of the neighbors. And we don't want to turn our street into a Toronto subdivision. We want to enjoy Muskoka and its nature that it brings. And yeah, if you have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And is there anyone left either online or in our chamber? Anybody online? Okay, great. All right.
Hi, my name is Carly. I am the partner of Patrick who just spoke, and I just kind of wanted to reiterate a couple things that he mentioned that I feel like are important. He mentioned the property line issue, which is our biggest concern of all, just because we are basically encroaching on their property, and so to have the congestion of two homes on that one lot, just looking at it from the street, you're kind of just like, how is that even going to be possible, let alone right in front of our cottage and right in front of our first home? So it's just a bit of a disappointment for us, having found out after we closed that this was the case, and now we're being faced with the possibility of these two homes being built right beside us, which is not why we bought the property. We bought the property because Muskoka is somewhere we love. We've grown up there, and we love the nature-esque feel of it, the ambiance, and the whole street is going to be greatly disturbed by all of the traffic, all of the noise, all of the mess, and especially us obviously being right beside it. So there's obviously many factors in why this is definitely not a great idea. But I think that for us, it's just the traffic and the noise and the congestion is really a big problem. And especially when you think about it in the long term, it's the long-term vision that you have for the street. It's that if you're letting him do this, then you're going to let other people do it, and then it's just going to become a subdivision in the city. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And any more hands up online? And there's nobody else in the chamber room here? Okay. We will go to question. Beg your pardon? Oh, I can see that. All right, so we'll go to questions from committee, and the first one is Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Councillor Bosworth, and through you to staff. I guess I strongly agree with the objectors. I do not think that we should be approving this. We have bylaws.
Councillor Kent, do you have a question? We're at question period. I haven't read the resolution yet.
What is the logic for allowing them for approving a 20% variance in the bylaw? Simple. I understand you're going to tell me it's internal housing, but we're setting a precedent. So I just want to hear what staff have to say. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosenworth, to Councillor Kent. I think to summarize sort of all the analysis in the report of the justification would be that this is an urban center. This is Bala, where infill is envisioned and higher intensity development is promoted in our official plan and through our zoning bylaw policies. The proposals before you meet all criteria of the zoning bylaw, including setbacks and lot coverage provisions, aside from the frontage. So that would be sort of to summarize.
Councillor Kent, do you have a supplemental? You're on mute.
I'll wait. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth, for allowing me to follow up to Ms. Crowder's explanation. I just wanted to explain a little bit more detail, the reasoning why infill is promoted in our urban centers. It's primarily to utilize lands that have full municipal services, and also to avoid development in areas outside of our built up areas or urban centers. And that's why planning policies promote infill or intensification in urban centers. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Zavitz. And then Councillor Kent.
Well, thank you, and through you. I guess if I could just follow up with Bryce's comment. I think it's important that the folks sitting here in objection understand that there are enhanced rules given that the urban piece of this in our towns where there's water and sewer services. So not that I'm going to take a position either way, but I wonder if Bryce, if you could expand just a little bit further in terms of, at some point in time, staff decided that 50 isn't necessary and 40 is okay in this particular case. Is 36 not good, but 40 is okay? Like I would love to understand the logic. And so I guess I'm asking a question here. What is the logic behind the splitting of an 80-foot lot into two 40-foot lots?
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. I did note that one of the objectors had raised a concern about something similar being done on the in the waterfront designation. I think it's important to recognize that this property is within the urban center designation of the township's official plan and is subject to specific policies within that designation. The policies within the waterfront designation are much different. So that would be one point of clarification I would make. Yes, the minimum lot frontage requirement for a severance is 50 feet. However, as we've noted, sitting around this table before, people can apply, applicants can apply to not meet that standard through a zoning bylaw amendment application, which is exactly what the applicant has done in this particular case. And I think staff would be much more concerned if it was impossible to meet, other performance standards in the zoning bylaw. I would note that in this particular case, the property is zoned community residential R1, and it's subject to a 6-foot side yard setback. Compare that to a waterfront property where the setback is 15 feet. So again, a 6-foot setback is just indicative of, increased density, tighter development within the urban center. And again, the applicant's agent has provided a site plan showing dwelling units that fully comply with the township's zoning bylaw despite the deficient frontage. So I think that is one aspect that gives us some comfort. I did note that Ms. Ledger had noted the neighbor's concerns, but I didn't hear her identify any considerations or ideas that could be done to try to alleviate those concerns. Staff have recommended site plan control, so there may be an opportunity through that process to do some plantings, but it may be worthwhile asking Ms. Ledger to clarify or elaborate on that. Thank you.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you through you,
Sorry.
Chair. That's okay.
Crowder.
That's okay.
Ms. Walker.
I knew you were
Yeah.
talking to me. Through you, Chair Bosworth, just wanted to add to Mr. Sharp's comments. Just one point that, these lots are on full municipal water and sewer services. So they don't need to be of a size to consider incorporating private services too on the property. So we don't need extra space or potential frontage to accommodate a septic system. Plus, I did want to just sort of clarify one thing. I think that the neighbors were referring to the waterfront lots that are in this area that are within the urban center. Those lots are zoned primarily R4, so they do have different lot frontage requirements than the lot we're dealing with right here. The minimum lot frontage is 100 feet rather than the lot we're dealing with, which is 50. So just wanted to clarify.
Ms. Ledger, did you have a comment based on what Mr. Sharp said?
Yes, thank you very much through you to Mr. Sharp and to committee. I just have a couple comments. One would be as far as setbacks go, it wouldn't matter if it were one lot or two, the setbacks remain the same, 6 feet. And it's very unfortunate about the adjacent property owner being as close to the line. And from what I've heard, they don't have a survey yet, but we will need to get a survey. So we'll definitely find out what's going on there. But it doesn't change what the setback would be, whether it's one lot or two. Having said that, being one of the conditions being site plan control, I do believe probably working with staff, we can maybe do some plantings for buffers. Obviously, there's going to be, they're working on the site, we're going to be removing trees. So it might be an opportunity to ensure that new plantings are done. So I'm happy to work with planning staff on that. And I think just on a sort of bigger look at this issue, and planning committee is going to have to deal with this, I think, more and more moving into the future, is that, the housing is a problem. you're never gonna, the people who don't want houses are people who already have houses. So you're always gonna have some opposition. Nobody likes change. And I completely understand all of that and appreciate what the neighbors are saying. But, you know, we have to take the opportunities when they arise. And this is, in fact, an in-town lot. You know, we've had city lots, and we like to think of Muskoka as not really downtown Toronto, and it isn't. You know, these are separate. These are not townhomes. These are separate lots. So I think it's a tough place to be in the planning committee, but I think more and more you're going to come up against it. I don't think anyone is ever going to be happy to you know, have more development in their neighborhoods, but we do have other issues to address, like housing. So I just wanted to sort of, I appreciate your dilemma here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Roberts. Questions?
Thank you. And I guess to Ms. Ledger. Hi, Terry. I guess as I look at this potential severance here, looking at the properties, these two proposed dwellings are identical. Am I correct? And are these meant to be they're being built for investment purposes or for resale, or are these two property, not that, you know, how does this factor in? I guess my question is, are these being built for resale?
Yes, they will be. And I'm assuming, I shouldn't speak for the owner, but I suspect that's the case. Yes. So they will probably, I mean, it's more efficient to have them to be very similar. So I suspect they will be, but I'm postulating a little bit, but hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts, then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. And it mentioned earlier about the survey, both the people opposed to the application and Ms. Ledger did comment in the survey. Forgive me if I missed it in the report. But is there, I would think the question would be, is there plans to do a survey? Thank you.
Scrouter.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosenworth, to Councillor Roberts. Yes, with any consent, a part of the approval process and registering of the consent requires a survey to be completed. Thank you.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Director Becking is on the call or not, but my question would be more to him and I can even ask a couple of property owners. I know that there's a history of water coming off of the train track, like the train behind these properties are the train tracks. And there's been a long history of phone calls coming in to get those concerns taken care of by our municipality. And I'm just wondering how we are addressing that, because this is going to even exacerbate the situation. And I was Director Becking, essentially, I don't think we're just going to get a lot more complaints. So I just wanted to find out how that, and then I have a further, please.
Thank you. Director Becking, are we listening in today? Appears not. CEO Hammond.
Mr. Chair, we've asked Mr. Bracken to join the meeting.
All right, so we'll go to Mayor Kelly, and then when Director Becking comes online, we'll get him.
Thank you. I was just actually trying to get first in line when you read the resolution, so I have something left to say after Ms. Ledger steals everything else that I had to say. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Nishikawa.
I'm just wondering, I can't recall if we've changed the signage, but we have had a history of problems at a few of our town docks, wharfs, and Curry Street is a concern. We've heard lots of concerns over, I think even this council has heard concerns about the parking and the dock usage. and more people using it as a recreate rather than a landing and getting off place, using it, putting out their towels and stretching out. And we have that at Whiting's Beach, and it's because there's rentals. And I'm wondering how we're going to address that type of situation. Because I don't know that our signage really does deal with that, because they're not, these literally are meant for getting in and out of your boat. That's.
All right, thank you. It's a comment. Question? Ms. Crowder, would have any comments on that? Or Director Pink?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth, to Councillor Nishikawa, I think that I would defer to my colleagues. I'm thinking who's responsible for the signage there. Maybe Director Pink can
Director
speak
Pink.
to this. Thank you.
Thank you, through you. Mr. Becking, when he does join, may have further information. I wasn't overly directly involved, but I do recall in the past, the parking has been a concern on Curry Street. And I do believe appropriate signage has been placed along that street in order to address that issue. I know a number of meetings were held with area residents in the past to locate appropriate no parking areas and parking areas. And my understanding, and perhaps if Mr. Kennedy's even on the call, I know bylaw staff were involved in parking enforcement in that area. And I have not heard of more recent concerns. I believe it has been addressed. But I think ultimately, I think we need to be cognizant that what's before us is a new lot creation proposal, and parking in the area and enforcement thereof of people using a nearby landing is a separate issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chief Kennedy, if you have some comments on the history of parking on the street and enforcement?
Through the chair, just bear with me 1 second. I'm just pulling up the parking bylaw just to refresh my memory on where they are. So based on the parking bylaw, Curry Street has no parking areas from 520 meters north of Weismiller Street to the end of it on the west side. And then on the east side of Curry Street, it goes from Weismiller Street all the way to the end. So in these past couple summers on Curry Street, there has been continual enforcement of parking in that area. We've written quite a number of tickets each weekend on Curry Street alone. You know, the no parking signs are there for a reason, and I think as Director Pink has already said, there was some past discussions in regards to where those no parking signs should be and where they should be allowed to park. So I believe there is a small area on one side of the street where people do park, and usually with trailers. It's usually boats and trailers that are parked there with vehicles. But for the most part, like, we're pretty diligent on enforcing the no parking regulations on the street each weekend. So you know, it is what it is. We can't stop people from parking in no parking areas. We could just ticket them.
Thank you very much. Director Becking, if you could. We had a question from Councillor Nishikawa with respect to water from the CP rail line.
Good morning, committee. Question?
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. We've had, through you to Director Bracken, we've had different dialogue over the last few years about the runoff from and property owners complaining about water coming from the rail down into those properties on Curry Street. And it feels to me like we're just opening another can of worms but what does our township actually do about this situation?
Mr. Chairman, the councillor is correct. That area is known to be problematic as it relates to drainage. And hence the reason why it was staff's recommendation that any approval be subject to site plan control, so that we can make sure that the drainage is properly addressed through the construction process. There is a small pond in behind
we have no ability to control the drainage that comes from the railway. That is their responsibility. We also have another problem in that there is drainage that's coming off the road and then sheets overland through those properties. I would say that the proposal that is before you is tight. A 40-foot lot, if we were talking about a greenfield development, is common practice throughout most urbanized communities. In this particular situation, I think it is tight. But I also think that with proper precautions and design elements, it can be made to work.
Councilor Nishikawa, subsequent question.
Thank you. So my understanding is we don't have storm water management down there. Like we don't have storm sewers.
That is
So
correct.
we don't have storm sewers, and because I've tried to been there with property owners trying to figure out where the water could go, but in all cases it was going to go through somebody else's property. Yours actually. And how could that happen? Like, and in fact, you know, there are stone walls, for instance, on the water side or on Lake Muskoka side of the road. And again, I'm just not clear how we even enforce the drainage onto other people's properties. Like, I'm not even sure how this can be clarified, and I don't think it's a site plan approval only thing.
Director Bracken.
The drainage will have to be directed to the rear of those properties, and what it'll do is it'll actually end up following the path of least resistance down to the pond, which is further to the north and to the east of the railway line, where it will sit and it will evaporate and do whatever else it would normally do. But I think that has to be an engineered approach, as opposed to just allowing things to be left to their own devices.
Director Bracken, does that include when you're doing site plan preparation, does that mean raising the land a little bit so that or creating pathways through the properties?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we don't take questions at this point. We're already in discussion with committee. Director Pink.
Thank you. If I could just clarify or add to the discussion, I think committee needs to be cognizant and aware that the property currently has development rights. It could construct a dwelling, likely in essence what you see as the two footprints combined up to 7,500 square feet, 6 feet from both sides, and under the current site plan control bylaw would not be subject to site plan control. So what's in front of you is a severance of those lots. Through that process, we have the ability to impose conditions. And as we've heard, one of those conditions is site plan control. These lots may not be developed for 1 year, 10 years, or 20 years, whichever time they are. Planning staff would note the condition and note the restriction and require an engineer to produce a stormwater management plan to address any water that comes onto the property and to ensure that it's appropriately controlled and any inflows equal the outflows. So I think, again, just some perspective that what's proposed is a severance of the lot. It's not creating the drainage issue, but in a way it actually gives the municipality some tools to try to at least address it.
One more and then Councillor Zavis.
Thank you, through you to Director Becking. The other situation, and I'm not sure how we're dealing with it, is when we our town wharf or dock, it then gets starting to be used more and more as a recreational spot, where that dock in particular is a working, very loading and unloading boats and people getting in and out. So when people, like I am concerned that this is going to become a rental type situation where people think that they can go and lay out their towel on the dock and make it their own picnic area and things. Do we have anything to deal with that?
Director Becking.
I would say not, you know, as it relates to can people lay on the dock? And no, I'm not aware of any regulation or bylaw that we have currently in place. Those are public spaces and the public is eligible to use them. Should it become an issue, then council could pass a bylaw to restrict uses at our public spaces. But that, I think that would be, you'd have to look at that situation in the context at the time that the issue gets raised.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. Listening to David and our staff on this particular issue, and of course, being intimate with the Curry Street parking over all these years, this is a big issue. It's going to be this is going to be a problem here. But I would have no recourse but to support staff. Unfortunately, I do believe that staff has girded, if you will, the township with the conditions that they've created. Here we are yet again, if I might. I guess the question I would have is, anywhere else in this township, do we have any kind of criteria for creating conditions near one of our wharves and ramps? And I guess that could be to Mr. Kennedy.
Who would like to answer that question?
I can take a stab at it, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe that we have any regulations presently in place that because we have a dock or a wharf for public access to water, that somehow restricts what can go on around it. We're dealing with a piece of private property here, and your means of control, as far as I'm aware, is through the zoning and official plan.
Thank you very much. I just have one question to clarify, because I don't think it's in the report. Does the proposal include 2 parking spots on the property, Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth. The development envelopes that have been shown are the dwellings themselves. The parking spaces haven't been shown on the plans, but they will need some means of parking on the property for the dwellings. I think we've heard that parking is quite limited and restricted on the road itself, so the properties will need to accommodate potential vehicles for the dwellings.
I'm just wondering how many. Is it 1 or 2?
It looks like Mr. Sharp's ready.
Director Bracken, we'll start with you.
If I could interject, the standard setback, front yard setback, is, I believe, 25 feet in this case. I'll look to the planning department to confirm that fact. The 25 feet, the magic behind the 25 feet, a standard vehicle is 7 meters.
21.
So there's space to provide parking between the property line and the face of the building, and that's the rationale behind that number.
Ms. Crowder.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosenworth. I can confirm that each dwelling will need 2 spaces.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. All right, I don't think there are any more questions here. Sorry, we don't get questions at this time. You've had your 5 minutes and we're in discussion now. And you had your chance at the beginning, so. All right, well. All right. Thank you. I can assure you that the drainage will be, has been told to us by staff, the drainage issue will be addressed. No. Right. Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to read the resolution. We'll move on with Oh, thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Through the chair, just to back on to Director Becking's answers to the questions in regards to like people being on the docks. The public docks and ramps bylaws is quite specific in it either deals with the parking of boats, or if it's dealing with commercial uses, whether it's limited or full commercial uses, which Weismiller is a limited commercial use dock. There are certain sections that do state that no person shall store materials on a township dock. So I would say that that is more specific to kind of construction materials and sorts of stuff like that. If someone goes onto a dock and they put a towel down and they're sunbathing, I don't think we would really articulate that as a material, to be quite honest with you. So I guess to summarize, Director Becking is correct. We do not have any regulations or provisions within any bylaw that would stop someone from laying on a dock like that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Kent, you had your hand up. Do you have one more question before I read the resolution?
I'm going to wait for comment period.
Thank you very much. All right. I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved, the Planning Committee recommended Township Council the consent application B0524ML be approved subject to the following conditions: that a satisfactory registrable description of the severed lot together with any required rights of way or easements be submitted to the township along with a registered copy of the reference plan, that each of the severed and retained lots receive separate individual water and sewer service connections from the mains to the street lines, that the land be subject to an agreement with the district that the lands be subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act as amended, respecting the provision of municipal services between the District Municipality of Muskoka and the owner applicant, that the availability of entrance permits be confirmed with the Township's Operational Services Department for the retained and severed lots, that cash in lieu of parkland be dedicated to the township in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the severed lot or the entire lands, whichever is less. The confirmation be received from Canadian Pacific Railway that all concerns respecting rail-related noise, vibration, and safety have been addressed, and that the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement any requirements to their satisfaction, or that a satisfactory noise and vibration study be conducted by a qualified professional, that study be implemented to the satisfaction of the township, which may include the requirement for, amongst others, a consent agreement, site plan agreement, and or zoning bylaw amendment to implement any of the recommendations of the study if necessary, and that the lands be rezoned to permit an exemption from the minimum lot frontage requirement of 50 feet for the retained and severed lots in application B0524ML. I open it up for discussion to committee. Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and I've been informed that I may have failed to address the last comment I made through you, so I'll say again, through you, I want to just talk to a couple of things. I gather, and I hope anyhow, we all feel a little uncomfortable with this right now. This is not an easy decision, but I think it's a good practice for what we are going to have to grapple with and deal with increasingly over the next few years as we find ways to solve a housing crisis, and a housing crisis which says that land that is zoned urban center and land that is serviced is ripe for densification and redevelopment. It's a mandate from the province. It's a problem, I will say, nationwide, but I only really know that it's a problem in Ontario and across this, certainly across this district. I'm not going to repeat everything that Ms. Ledger said, but we definitely, I do want to say that by going last, you get to learn. And I learned from Mr. Pink that the sort of development rights as of right on this property in particular right now are, I don't want to be mistaken here, 7,500 square feet, single building, 6 feet on either side from the lot line. And if it was exercised on that basis, this body would have no input over site plan. This body would have very limited ability to control a lot of the variables that we're working on to solve some of the issues that are being raised by the neighbors. But in this particular case, the application is for a severance, and the application is to create a new lot, frankly, two lots of 40 feet. Gives the opportunity for us to address some of the issues like drainage, like parking, like other issues. I think reinforces the need to make sure we're spot on when it comes to the kinds of bylaws that we need to have in place to control things like parking. And I don't just mean, with all due respect to Mr. Kennedy, sticking tickets under windshields. Maybe we've got to look at tags and tows. Maybe we've got to look at ways to be a lot more aggressive at solving that issue. There are property rights, development rights. There are development rights that right now we need to look as aggressively as we can to support the development of the housing that this district needs. There are hundreds of people on waiting lists at the district for housing, and every new development, whether it's just one house here or 5 houses there, eases that burden a little bit. As long as it falls within the terms of our bylaws, and as long as we're able to see a way clear, I've stopped trying to print everything, so I don't have it in front of me, but my recollection from Ms. Crowder's, I think, report says that reducing the minimum lot size from 50 depends on the use to which the property is going to be put and the size and scale or something like that of the development that's proposed for it. And as uncomfortable as it makes us feel, nobody wants to see this change. Nobody will ever want to be comfortable with more people on the wharf, more people on the beach, more people on the road, more people in the stores and on the sidewalks. But the fact is, properties like this are ripe for the redevelopment that we need in this jurisdiction to add more to the housing stock, to bring more people in and give them the opportunity to be part of the housed. And so I'm going to be supporting it. It's never going to be an easy one. This is a good dress rehearsal. We're going to be in this situation a lot. Thank you.
Please, if those present in the room could just remain quiet, please. Councillor Kent.
I'm gonna thank you, and through you, I'm gonna make a comment that is going to be unpopular, but I have now been approached by 3 different constituents in the last week saying, what is the point of having a bylaw? Okay, whether it be this one or in the case of another file that's coming up later today. What is the point of having a bylaw if we just the planning staff disobey it or don't follow it? A bylaw is a bylaw. It's not a by concept. And I really believe with 10 objectors, a 20% variance in the bylaw. I realize there are housing considerations. Will be other places where affordable housing will be built. I don't think it should necessarily be right smack in the middle of a residential neighborhood where people have kids and people walking around. This is not a 10 to 11% increase in lot coverage where somebody can tell me that the official plan overrides. There's no reason to reduce a bylaw restriction of 50 down to 40. It changes the whole nature of it. If it was intended to be 40, let's make it 40. So I think we look foolish personally. And I've had a very hard time explaining this to constituents who keep saying, we all ran as constituents, as township councilors on the fact that we were going to do better bylaw management. We were going to watch the construction and building bylaws and make sure that we applied them. And I realize there's lots of gray in what the planning staff do, but personally, there's a reason why we have the bylaws. It says 50 feet. Let's apply the 50 feet. If you want it to be 40 feet, then we should change it. And I will not be supporting this, despite the fact that I guess the majority of the other members of council will. I think we look foolish. I've had too many people come up to me, and it continues every single meeting where we don't apply them in a way that is understandable to the constituents that are out there.
Thank you very much. Director Pink, do you have any comments?
Sure, thank you. Through you, I think committee and council needs to be cognizant that should bylaws have been meant to be written and never amended, the province set up a system that specifically gives every property owner the right to make an application and apply. And I think council also needs to be cognizant that many times bylaw amendments are passed unanimously and they make sense for the land. And we need to review each application on its own merits and refer to official plan policies when making those recommendations. But taking a stance that council can, or the municipality can pass a one-size-fits-all zoning bylaw for every single property in our township and get it perfect and get it right, that it will allow that site to be developed in the best, the most appropriate way, is frankly impossible. And that's why you have a minor variance process and a zoning amendment process. And the vast majority of applications are approved unanimously by both neighbors and by council and committee. I think the other thing that council needs to be cognizant of, there may be a perception, that every application is approved or supported by staff. There are numerous proposals that council and the neighbors don't see. Staff regularly meet with individuals who have all kinds of plans and ideas that clearly don't conform with our official plan, and staff advise them of that, and those applications don't see the light of day. But you do see some applications, and in this particular one, I think we need to be cognizant that when we review these applications, we're guided by the provincial policy statement as planners, and also all applicable policy, in this case, our official plan. And the official plan recently passed now has a housing section, and it speaks to the need, the desire for more housing, intensification, and relaxing standards, in particular lot frontage, in order to accommodate more development on municipal services. So staff is making a recommendation to you in accordance with what provincial policy state and our own official plan policy state. And hence we feel it is appropriate in this case to relax those standards. I think as staff has correctly pointed out to you, there will be a limit. Certainly in this case, either one large dwelling will likely one day be developed on this site, or two more modest, smaller homes will be developed on this site. But in essence, the build form will be quite similar. There likely will be development stretching across the lot. It's a question of, again, one larger home or two smaller, and given policy, staff feel this is appropriate. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Director Pink. Councillor Zavitson and I think Councillor Nishikawa. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could just keep David up on his feet for a moment, I guess to that regard, and use the word leniency, I guess the understanding would be for some here that may not know this. I wonder, David, if you could just very briefly explain the urban versus rural treatment of a property in the township of Muskoka Lakes, that being additional rights, if you will, where there's a serviced property like these are. I wonder if you could just explain the roof coverage, et cetera. Thank you.
Director Pink.
Thank you. Through you. I believe what you may be referring to are, quite significant differences between urban and rural development. And again, province really encourages municipalities to focus their growth and development in urban centers in order to use municipal services. We have some of the highest water and sewer rates, if not the highest, I believe, in the entire province because of our limited growth on municipal services. In our rural area, they've actually slightly decreased with our new official plan, but we're still looking upwards of 500 feet and 5 acres per property. So we're really looking for a low density rural pastoral feel, while in the urban centers that reduces to, as we've heard today, down to 50 feet and quite a minimal amount of acreage. So hopefully that responds to your inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I can't support this particular application. I miss the days when council actually used to go out or committee would do site visits. This is a very, very challenging street. Has been challenging for many, many years. There's a dead end. There's a public wharf at basically one end that a lot of cars are turning, all of those types of things. But more importantly, the railroad has made it very difficult to build in that area. It's been very, very challenging. The runoffs, I don't believe that I've contacted Director Bracken enough about how many calls I get about the concerns and the runoff and what are we doing. There's a couple of property owners that aren't here today that have big concerns, and I don't believe that this is I can show you a couple of other locations in Bala that we can are much more suitable, much sort of, the land is more suitable, I'll just say that, to in fact do that 40-foot type. This is not the location, in my opinion, at all. And as well, I doubt very much that you were ever going to get a 7,500 square foot house on this particular lot. It would not make sense for the economic in that area. So that doesn't sort of scare me or whatever, but I can't support this. This is way too tight. And you use the right word. It is too tight. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosemuth. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. I just wanted to remind committee that if it is the desire to implement a condition for stormwater management through site plan control, the resolution will need to be updated to reflect that.
All right. Councillor Zavitz. We'll get
Thank
some
you.
comment on that in a minute.
Okay, thank you. So speaking to the stormwater piece, and of course, that has been an ongoing problem on the street. Director Becking is standing right there. Director Becking, a few years ago, it was a scenario that the township was going to redo, if you will, Curry Street, adding storm, et cetera, repaving. Can you speak to that in terms of how why that never happened? And in fact, is that in the longer term strategy? Because of course we do have water sitting up the road, not necessarily where these are being developed, but there is water sitting, just up the road a bit on Curry Street. Can you speak to that, please?
Director Becking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thinking back, I know that we did look at resurfacing the roadway, and we also looked at various drainage outlets. But I believe the outlets were to the east. The township has another road allowance further from Weismiller, and it outlets directly to the lake. And I think when Curry Street is redone, the township should consider making some modifications to the road allowance in order to get drainage flowing to an outlet, which we have the capacity for, but does not presently exist, to my knowledge.
Thank you. Committee, the suggestion that Ms. Crowder has made about adding a clause into the resolution to ensure that stormwater management, I think, but Ella would agree that that's a good idea. Director Pink, could you do that for me? And in the interim, is there any more comments from committee? Do I need to reread the whole resolution or just that clause? Okay. Committee, I'm just going to read the clause that we have added into this before I'll ask for final comments and then we'll call the vote. That the proposed severed and retained lots be made subject to site plan control to address drainage concerns. So that's been added to the resolution. Are there any more further discussions on this resolution? If not, I will call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? That is carried. Thank you. All right. And the zoning amendment, yeah, so, like this one? Sorry, just,
Why are we muted?
second, moved by Mayor Kelly, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 1024 be approved. Any discussions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, let's after that, I think we can have a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 25 after 10.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, was that a yes? Thank you. All right. So we are live. We will call this meeting back to order. And our next application is B 080924 ML. And the planner is Christian? Ms. Darling.
Thank you, Chair. The first this application to be heard is concurrent consent application B 080924 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0924 in the name of Payne. The subject land is known municipally as 1139 Morinus Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent sketch on page 42 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the concurrent consent application B 0809 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0924 is to create 2 new rural residential lots and to provide an exemption from rural lot creation requirements, being that 1 lot is permitted to be created by consent as of October 13th, 1992, when the original lot is less than 100 acres in size. Committee of Adjustment granted the applicants consent to create 1 new lot in October of 2022, and the parent lot now is less than 100 acres in size. It's approximately 87 acres. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 21 days in advance of this meeting, and 4 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and the district municipality of Muskoka's planning department, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were received from Tim Sopko, the township's manager of public works, stating it is recommended that the severance should be subject to confirmation from Operational Services Department of availability of an entrance permit for this 2 separate lots. Comments were received from Brad Peterson, the township's building inspector, stating that severed lot number 1, the northern lot, an inspection should be done during drier conditions to confirm suitable area for a dwelling and sewage system, specifically lot number 1, due to the amount of ponding and flooding observed. They're requesting an EIS as a condition, and drainage improvements are likely needed to permit access and develop the lot. The proposed exemption is summarized as shown on the screen, and this table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the consent application B 080924 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0924 in the name of Payne to be deferred in order to complete the study requirements outlined in the staff report plan 2024-036. The applicants the applicant's agent emailed us yesterday and have asked for the application to be deferred until the snow has melted for a follow-up inspection as suggested by the septic inspection report and planning report. Staff have no further comments at this time, but are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Darling. Do we have anybody here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Questions from committee to staff? Seeing none. I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that a decision on consent application B 080924 ML and zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0924 be deferred in order to complete the study requirements outlined in the staff report plan 2024-036. Any discussions? I will call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. It's your job, right? Anybody opposed? Okay. The next one is a zoning bylaw application ZBA 0524. And Ms. Darling, I think you have the floor again.
Thank you, Chair. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0524 in the name of Propeller Fine Homes. The subject land is known municipally as 1085 Mortimer's Point Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketch on page 57 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to fulfill a condition of consent. Consent application B1423 ML in the name of Propeller Fine Homes was provisionally granted by the Township's Committee of Adjustment in May of 2023 to create a new lot. An environmental impact study was prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., which identified a wetland and a wetland buffer over a part of the subject land. Committee of Adjustment imposed a condition of consent requiring zoning bylaw amendment to prohibit buildings and structures within 100 feet of the identified wetland feature on both the severed and retained lots. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 21 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, Tim Sopko, the Township's Manager of Public Works, and the District Municipality of Muskoka Planning Department. They all stated no objection to the application. The proposed exemptions or some exemption is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0524 be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody wishing to speak in favor or opposition to this application? Oh, yes, of course. I can't see your name, so, but please state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair, staff, council. Thank you for your time today. My name is Zachary Allison, 1615 Beatrice Town Line, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1X4.
Could you move a little closer to your microphone? We're having trouble hearing you.
Sorry.
That's better.
Repeat my name, sir.
Yeah, I think you should start again. We didn't get the name and address.
Okay, certainly. My name is Zachary Allison, 1615 Beatrice Town Line Road in Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L 1X4. I'm just here today to answer any questions the staff or committee may have, but I think we're procedural at this point, so I'll leave it to you guys.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else? Thank you very much. Open to committee for questions. No questions. I will move to reading the motion. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Township Council that zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0524 in the name of Propeller Fine Homes be approved. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Carried. All right, next on the agenda Homes is report from our Chief Building Officer, isn't it? Nice try. If you're that keen, we could adjust things, right? I know.
Appreciate the effort, Bruce. Good morning, Chair Bosworth and committee members. Today I'm here to present to you the Building Division Annual Activity Report in accordance with Section 7, Sentence 4 of the Building Code Act. The data required to be provided by the Act includes the total fees collected in the previous 12 months, so the 2023 year, the direct and indirect costs, and the reserve fund value at the end of 2023. That information was all included in the report, so I won't read that out to you. This report is simply for information purposes, and I stand for questions.
Committee, do we have any questions? Councillor Nishikawa.
An extension of the report, I guess, thank you through you to the chief building official. I wanted to just ask what his sense is of this year's market or the applications coming in.
Thank you, and through you, Chair.
Go ahead.
I assume you mean 24, correct? So what we have seen in the first 2 months and to date is that applications are increased from last year over the same period. Values are increased over last year from the same period. Approaching, let me look here. Approaching very near to 2022 values to date. So in that regard, I think we're seeing a slight bounce back, at least to date, from last year's activity.
Thank you. And if I just find that very odd, like, because out in my little world, contractors are desperately looking for work right now. So they're available, I'm just saying, but so that I'm just was surprised to hear that. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from committee? Very well. Thank you for your report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Clearly very succinct. All right, now we are very keen to hear the next case. This is unfinished business that Mr. Sharp is going to finish off for us. And this is the ZBA 39/23 unfinished business, in the case name of Saunders. Mr. Sharp, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth, and good morning, committee. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 39/23, bylaw 2023-134 in the name of Saunders. The subject property is known municipally as 1151 Roberts Bay Road. The application is returning as unfinished business. It was deferred by committee in January for receipt and analysis of submissions. I'm filling in for Caitlin Walker today, and I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge Ms. Walker for her hard work in preparing the reports related to this matter. Next slide, please. The application has been submitted to permit an existing storage building to be converted into a recreational and leisure building on a lot with an existing dwelling and sleeping cabin, to define the use of the recreational and leisure building, and to limit the maximum permitted gross floor area of the recreational and leisure building to 1,245.4 square feet. 15 submissions were received in advance of the public meeting in January. Comments were received by the district municipality of Muskoka, from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and from Tim Sopko, the township's manager of public works, each identifying no objections. Comments were also received from the applicant Graham Saunders, and 9 submissions were received from area landowners, all in support. The 2 letters of objection were also received by Al Moran and one by the Muskoka Lakes Association. These submissions were compiled and forwarded to committee in January. Following the January meeting, Scott Patterson, who is an area landowner, filed a submission identifying support for the application. Comments have also been received from Timothy Van Kroestum of Muskoka Lumber, detailing considerations related to the application. And a letter of objection has also been received from Stephen Fauner of Northern Vision Planning Limited, who has been retained by the Muskoka Lakes Association. These submissions have also been compiled and forwarded to committee. Next slide, please. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 112 of the agenda package. The proposed recreational and leisure building is located on the west side of the subject property. The property has over 600 feet of lot frontage on Lake Joseph and is over 2 acres in size. As I have noted, the building proposed to be converted to a recreational and leisure building exists and is currently permitted a storage use. Next slide, please. Staff have prepared a detailed planning report for committee's consideration. Staff have recommended that a decision be deferred until matters relating to habitable buildings are considered as part of the pending municipal-wide update of the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Staff's main concerns are cumulative impact and precedent. It is understood from the submissions filed to date for this application that there is an apparent community-wide interest and likewise a potential community-wide impact. And therefore, it is the opinion of staff that a cautious approach is warranted in this case. I have no further comments and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharp. We'll go immediately to committee for questions. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, as I read in the Ms. Walker's report under conclusions, the second paragraph, although staff acknowledge that the recommended deferral may not be preferred by the applicant, as the building exists as a storage building, this use in the interim can continue. I guess to staff or to bylaw, are we certain that this building is being used as a storage building? It surely doesn't look like it's storing much besides people.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. I see that Chief Kennedy has his screen on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fauner, we will get to you. My apologies for not doing you first. Mr. Kennedy.
Through the chair, to answer on a bylaw perspective, this property has been subject to numerous complaints related to this building being used as essentially a second dwelling. Staff have taken action on, again, numerous occasions in regards to this. However, we have not received any complaints within about, I would say, the last year or so for the misuse of this building, and staff have not attended the property to check up on it either.
Thank you very much. If it's a related question. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Bird.
Thank you, and through you to our chief bylaw enforcement. Rob, you said 2 dwellings or 2 habitable spaces. I believe this property has a dwelling and a sleeping cabin over the boathouse, which would make this a 3rd habitable building at the time that the infractions were made, not 2. Is that correct?
Sorry, through the chair, that is correct. They do have a 2nd-story sleeping cabin above their boathouse, obviously their main dwelling unit. And again, sorry, to clarify, the complaint surrounded this building being used as another habitable building on the property.
Thank you. Mr. Fauner, welcome. And on the same topic, American. All right, then we'll finish off on this topic. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Kennedy has left.
Mr. Kennedy, if you could come back on, please. There he is.
Just to paraphrase what you said a second ago, you said that there have been no complaints in the last year or so, and you have not attended on the property to verify use. I'm curious to know, do we have the right to attend on the property to verify use in the absence of a complaint or other kind of probable cause?
Mr. Kennedy?
Through the chair, under the Planning Act, we have certain rights to entry for possible zoning violations. An officer needs to have some sort of suspicion that there is a contravention occurring on the property. I would say that the past complaints would warrant that we would be able to freely enter onto the property to check whether or not this property is in compliance. So we can certainly do that. And we have done that on other properties in the past just to make sure that people haven't reverted back to the misuse after we've already actioned it. But yeah, there is certain rights to entry. Without a complaint, it is a little bit more difficult. However, like I said, with the past complaints, we would consider us doing essentially a checkup would be more of the suspicion to make sure that the property is in compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any other questions on this topic? And if not, we'll go to Mr. Fauner. Very well, Mr. Fauner, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bosenworth, members of the committee. Stephen Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109 Meadow Heights Drive, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1A4. I'm here today representing the Muskoka Lakes Association, and I appreciate the opportunity to make a very brief presentation on this matter. It's a very difficult one. My approach has been of a general nature. I haven't looked at really the specifics of this application, but on a general note, just a few points I want to make. Basically, definitely agree with staff's recommendation to defer the matter and have this as part of a comprehensive review. There is, potential for precedent here, as was noted by Bryce in his presentation. To me, I believe that's very significant. And the idea and notion of precedent is certainly supported in your updated official plan under section N3, which says that you must have to take that into account when making planning decisions. I would also point out, too, that because there is an enabling policy regarding the use of the first floor of a boathouse as potential habitable space, we're now no longer talking about a third habitable building on a property. We're now talking about a fourth habitable building on a property. So I want to point that out, that, and that's quite a leap from, the initial considerations in the official plan of just having 2 habitable buildings. If there's a criteria to be established, and I think that staff may be pointing in that direction, and they certainly noted that in their report, it has to be, of course, very carefully done, and there has to be a definition of what kind of buildings these are, which needs to be very clear. We need to look at lot size. We need to look at setbacks, maybe overall size and floor area of the type of structure. And we also need to look at, in my opinion, which lakes is this going to be allowed on? Is it going to be allowed township-wide or just the 3 large lakes? So that's something that have to be looked at. So it'll need to be a very comprehensive criteria. The last point that I want to make is maybe the point that I don't agree with staff. And in my opinion, there is a conformity issue here. To me, there is not the authority in the existing and updated official plan that says that you can have additional habitable buildings on the property. And I stress that as being habitable. You're not going to find all the answers in your official plan as to what structures are permitted. Such things as docks are permitted, and garages certainly, but those generally are not habitable. So I think the key is habitable buildings. And with that, I think it would be relatively easy to do. I think this is a case where you want to look at the detail in a zoning bylaw review. And then as part of that, and can be added on to the end, is just some general official plan policy that gives the municipality the authority to consider an additional habitable building. So I think it's not a major task by any means, but I think it's an add-on, and I think it would provide clarity for old guys like me who are still reading the official plan and saying it's only 2 habitable buildings. I think that an accompanying official plan amendment, a brief one, would be most appropriate in this case. So certainly strongly in favor, and the MLA is in favor of deferral of this matter, and we agree with staff, and wish you luck on your deliberations on this particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Fauner from committee? Are there any further questions to staff on this? Councillor Nishikawa.
I'm not quite sure how to frame this, but I'm concerned that we have something out there that just says you're allowed to build up to 11%. You just have to apply and you'll get 11%. That concerns me, just period, because there used to be, you had to give reasons why you needed that extra percent or whatever the number is. But my concern is that how does, going forward, how does these I'm thinking about lot coverage. I'm just thinking about how many more buildings on a property and how that will appear. And then therefore, are we going to get more applications for larger lot coverage? And so I'm not sure that we have an answer today, but it is all about, like, again, we used to have to look at why people needed the extra percentage, for instance, they wanted to put in a wheelchair ramp or accessibility, all of, like, there was a good reason why they needed it. I don't see the reasoning anymore. So I'm challenged that way. And while, you know, the thing is you can't go against staff, well, I'm very challenged because again, why are we doing this and why are the numbers in the bylaw? And how does making these changes affect, for instance, lot coverage? And then therefore, why would we ever give them 1 more % for an additional habitable building?
Mr. Sharp, if you could comment on that.
Thank
for
you,
us.
through you, Chair. In this particular instance, the building that's proposed actually complies with all other performance standards in the zoning bylaw. So it complies with setbacks and lot coverage. So there is no lot coverage request in front of us here today. More generally or more broadly, you know, lot coverage is one of our more common application types. There's quite a few minor variances that get submitted for lot coverage as part of those applications. There's an application that needs to be filed, of course, and the applicant is required to state their reasoning, and that is given some consideration as part of our review and analysis of those applications. I think the township has been smart over the years to include quite strict policies around lot coverage. Anything exceeding 1/10 of the permitted lot coverage on a property requires an official plan amendment. And I think that has prevented, you know, a creep of increasing coverage over the years, and we've been able to manage it quite effectively using those policies, which have been carried forward in our new official plan. Thank you.
We have any other questions from committee? Seeing none, let me read the resolution. Moved by Mayor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that a decision on the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 39/23 bylaw 2023-134 be deferred until such time as matters relating to habitable accessory buildings are considered as part of the pending municipal-wide update of the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Committee, is there any discussion on this item before I call the vote? Councillor Roberts and then Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, a comment. I fully the comments that the mayor had made about revisiting properties, not the specific property, revisiting properties that have had a history of problems with using structures, that we should really ask maybe Mr. Pink and bylaw to put it sort of in their schedule, just sort of a, you know, an occasional drop by, just to know that we're watching. Thank you.
Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, just real quick, I think this is a really logical, thoughtful approach to solving this issue. And I particularly like it because we're going to do it in a much more comprehensive manner than we would just doing it on a one-off basis. So unfortunately, the applicant does have to wait, but it will be a better result as, you know, at the end of the day.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, through you to David, please. We have seen where applicants will go off and file to land tribunal, OMB, whatever we're calling it these days, ahead of schedule because we haven't acted on the file. What risk are we here for that?
Director Pink.
Thank you, through you. As noted in the staff report, the recommendation does open the possibility that the applicant could appeal a lack of decision. Hopefully that's not the case, but that is a right afforded to them. If that does occur, staff would certainly advance the same arguments that are in the staff report.
Any other comments? I've read it, yes. All right, let me call the vote. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Yes. Yep. Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Our next item is Plan 2024-29 ZBA 0624 Lily Holdings, and I think this is Mr. Sharp. Oh, sorry, Miss Crowder.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth. The next application to be heard is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0624 in the name of Lily R. Holdings Incorporated. The subject lands are known municipally as 1019 Ransbury Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted zoning sketch on page 144 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0624 is to construct a new dwelling and single-story boathouse which cumulatively exceed the maximum permitted total lot coverage and maximum permitted lot coverage within 200 feet of the high water mark, and to construct a pergola atop a dock where a pergola is not a recognized structure within a water body open space zone. As committee may recall, this application was originally heard at last month's planning committee meeting held on February 15th, 2024. Committee made a decision to defer the application, requesting that the applicant and/or agent confer with neighbors regarding their concerns and to consider amending the development plans in response to concerns raised. Since the initial meeting, the agent has conveyed that they have reached out to the neighbors who expressed concerns per committee's request. Further, the agent has conveyed that they have considered alternative development plans, but have concluded that the proposal before committee is the option that will have the lowest impact on the lake. The agent provided the renderings that are displayed on the screen before you. This provides a visual of what the proposed boathouse and pergola will look like when viewed from the east and west. In the upper photo, the pergola is indicated using a teal arrow. In the lower photo, the pergola is not visible. The portion indicated by the teal arrow in the lower photo is part of the compliant boathouse. We received some comments following the agent's presentation last week where this portion of boathouse was confused for the pergola, so just wanted to clarify that. There were some questions regarding the intended use of the pergola. At the previous meeting, the agent has asked staff to clarify that the pergola is not for shade, but is merely an architectural feature that ties in well with the aesthetic of the proposed boathouse and dwelling. Exposed heavy timber is a general theme, and the agent designed the boathouse to match. Following the initial meeting, 4 comments have been received, which were circulated to committee prior to today's meeting. Letters of opposition were received from Bob and Carol McCabe, area property owners, Tim and Earl Edwards, area property owners, John Lugston, area property owner, and Dan and Sheila Butko, abutting property owners to the west. To summarize the letters, the concerns relate to approvals outside of the permissions within the zoning bylaw and the overall impacts of development on this portion of the lake. The proposed exemptions are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the initial circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. In an effort to address concerns regarding the proposed pergola, staff have recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 0624 be approved, subject to a revision in the amending bylaw that the pergola be unroofed and unenclosed. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee, do we have any questions on this file? I think Mayor Kelly, then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you, I guess it comes down to what unroofed means and whether somebody throwing a tarp over it has effectively created a roof, or somebody who gets a bunch of Sorry. Now can we hear? I guess the mic's on, it better. The question really comes down to the definition of unroofed. This is an issue where adding the condition that it remain unroofed is important, I think, but I want to make sure I understand what unroofed means. My question was whether a tarp thrown over the pergola, some umbrella material, that fiber, I mean, I just don't know whether, are we talking about specifically hard material roof or just anything that would prevent wind or rain from dropping through the pergola? Is that a roof?
Ms. Crowder?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth. So I think the intention when we've included this is that we won't have a roof put on that will contribute to lot coverage. I think that was sort of the intent. However, like a tarp or some sort of fabric that's easily removable, that type of thing wouldn't generally count toward lot coverage as it's not a permanent fixture. However, if this is also a concern, we can include in the bylaw a definition of what we mean by unroofed. We can sort of preclude certain materials or preclude anything from being on top of that. Thank you.
Mr. Sharp, if you want to add to that, and then we'll get, if the agent wants some time, I'm happy to give them that.
Thank you, Chair Bosworth. I just clarify one comment made by Ms. Crowder. The zoning bylaw defines lot coverage, and it defines lot coverage as any building or structure that has a roof. It doesn't define roof or roofed, but staff have always turned to definitions with respect to that, and we consider it anything that would provide shelter from the elements. In other words, to keep the rain or snow out. So in my opinion, if you were to put a tarp over this pergola, then that becomes a roof. I suppose a sunbrella fabric material, perhaps there's a bit of a gray area there. I guess we would have to cross that bridge when we get there, if that is a concern. Thank you.
All right, now the applicant's agent, if you wish to speak, I see your hand up, and then Councillor Kent.
Morning, everyone. This is Alex Forshoe. I am the agent for my client for this application.
Could we have your address too, please? Thanks.
It's 3 Lee Valley Drive, Unit 2, Port Carling, Ontario, P0B1J0.
Okay.
Just to answer the question that was proposed, and just to remind everyone that I'm sure my client is going to be spending multiple $1 million on this project, this development project. And I don't think that a tarp or a sunbrella material added to this multi-million-dollar development is in keeping with the architecture or the aesthetic. So just wanted to remind everyone that the application was for an unroofed pergola, and there is no roof to be placed, or tarp or sunbrella material. Thank you.
Do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
I do have something to say. Yeah, sure.
Yep, fine. Now's your time.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for your time and input on this application to allow the 11% lot coverage and a pergola structure on the dock. As we all know, this application was discussed a few weeks ago, and there was much discussion around the application, so it was deferred to today. As part of the deferral notice, there were a couple of action items that were given to me to execute, to confer with the neighbors, and also consider amending the development plan. I sent 3 emails to the neighbors that had letters of objection. 1 neighbor never responded. 1 neighbor responded but didn't want to discuss. And then 1 neighbor I did have a conversation with. I also have considered the concerns raised, and I would still like to continue with my original application. I wanted to bring up that this application is for an extra 1% of coverage, totaling 11%. I've read the letters of objection, and I think there's some confusion that the objections thought there were an extra 10% allowed. I know that the official plan in clause E4.3.2.a a limit of 11% of coverage can be considered through a minor variance or zoning bylaw amendment process. And that's the process that we're talking about right now. And so we've tried to, in limiting the amount of impact on the lake and the structures on the lake, I wanted to keep the majority of the 11% coverage over the 66-foot line to the cottage, because it's elevated and it's heavily treed and vegetated. So all of the extra 1% would be attributed to the cottage and not to the boathouse. Because I did send, and if we could bring that site plan up that I sent to Emily, just showing, I wanted to show everyone what could be considered as for the boathouse. It's right now that single-story boathouse is around 753 square feet, but this gray outline with the blue outline showing where the dock is actually could be 1,600 square feet. And we could have completely redesigned the cottage and the boathouse structure to maximize the single-story boathouse on the lakefront, but I wanted to mind the impact on the lake from the western view. So I took all of the coverage and attributed to the cottage. And with the pergola structure, it is unroofed. It will remain unroofed. And it is completely hidden and tucked away in behind the back of the boathouse and is compliant with the maximum width and the maximum depth of a boathouse that would be allowed as of law today. So that's all I have. Thank you for consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Kent. Give you a question.
Yes, I have a question, and then I will hold my comments till later. I guess two questions. What was, as per Councillor Nishikawa's comments from the last file, which is the 10 versus 11% coverage, why do you think, what are your arguments for why you need extra coverage? The bylaw is 10%. I understand the OP will allow you to 11%, but there should be some discussion about what the real need is and why you can't fit into the 10% bylaw. The neighbors I know had quite upset about this, and it caused a bunch of ruckus in the bay, which is very small and very cozy. So I'd certainly like to hear your explanation of that. I guess the other second question is, what is the point of an unroofed wooden structure that effectively looks like a roof from the water? It's, it has the same visual impact, in my opinion, as a roofed coverage for the boat. I understand there's no actual roof tiles on it, but it's got all the big wood framing that take up that show, from a visibility standpoint. Apart from telling me it's an aesthetic, which I can't imagine it actually is, because it's not consistent with anything else in the building plan. What your thoughts on that are? So two questions for the agent. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder, could we have your thoughts on that?
Through you, Chair Bosenworth, I believe, unless I misheard, that Councillor Kemp was looking to Mr. Forshoe to answer this one.
Yes, I did.
Very well. Oh, I'm sorry. I misinterpreted that. Mr. Forshoe?
So to answer the last question first, it is an architectural detail. And if you did look, and I'm totally fine to provide the plans to you so you can familiarize yourself with the design intent. But if you looked at the cottage and if you looked at other parts of the boathouse, you would see other heavy timber exposed, and you would understand why I'm trying to tie in the boathouse to the cottage. And if you don't understand why it's there, design is subjective, and that's the way that I've designed it. And this is why I'm going through this process. So it's an architectural detail to tie the cottage and the boathouse together. I'm more than happy to provide details for the cottage so you can understand.
The second question?
Oh, go ahead.
The second question I asked you was, please explain why you think you need the extra square footage in the cottage and you can't apply to meet the 10% criteria.
Yeah, so
Mr. Fortescue?
my client does have a larger family, and they're expecting more family members to be added, and this is a legacy cottage for them. And they want to invest the money and build it right once. So this is why we're going through this process to allow the extra coverage so that we can build the right cottage first for the client's current and growing family.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you to staff who work in them. Do we have any of the property owners that filed their complaints? Did they happen to call in?
This is,
I'm asking.
you mean for this meeting? Because this is not a public meeting, so they don't have the right to speak.
I just had a question for them. That's why I wanted to ask the questions. So because we've been given a long list of their concerns and things, and it's not clear to me that those concerns were actually addressed. And that's why I wanted to ask.
Well, this is,
If I may.
Ms. Crowder.
Through you, Chair Bosenworth. I'd look to my counterparts here to let us know if anybody is online and raising their hands. I believe that the process is that if Councillor Nishikawa has a direct question for one of them, then that would be permitted, but I can confirm that none of them requested to delegate today, per our policies to delegate.
Yeah.
I'll change my questions then if I'm
Go ahead.
I think I will be more specific. You know, the question, the applicant's agent raised that in fact, he could have made a larger boathouse. I'm still very challenged as to what the purpose is of other than the messages out there that everybody gets 11% if they apply. And I'm very concerned that that's the direction that we've taken and are taking. And I don't see where this need is. So was the need in the boathouse or in the cottage? Like, I don't see the splitting out that that the main cottage was gaining more from the lack of the boathouse. Cause I've certainly built smaller boathouses for people and you can fit. So I'm just trying to, I'm challenged about how this is happening.
Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Bosworth, with respect to lot coverage, I would say the overall intent of the official plan in the waterfront designation, the policies of the waterfront designation, is to ensure that there's an appropriate balance between natural and built form, and that natural form is going to dominate. And if you recall, a photo that Ms. Crowder shared of the frontage of the property today overlooking the proposed development envelope, it appears that the entire frontage is quite well vegetated with conifers, look like predominantly hemlock to me. And I think, you know, we would be hard pressed to gain a clear view of this dwelling from the water once it's constructed. So I think we've given quite a bit of weight to the quality of the vegetative shoreline buffer and the overall intent of the official plan policies. Yes, the numerical amount of lot coverage is 1% more than what's otherwise permitted. I would note that the lot coverage on the total lot is quite a bit less than what's permitted, I believe around 6%, but it's within 200 feet that we're considering today. So those would be my comments. Hopefully they're helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Sharp, if I could ask for clarification on, is there anything in the legislation that requires an applicant to express a need for an overvariance, or are they just have the right to ask?
For minor variances, it's a bit different. I believe we do have a section in our application that speaks to the need for the variance, and I think that is somewhat helpful with respect to committee of adjustment, allowing committee of adjustment and staff to consider the 4 tests of a minor variance. What you have in front of you today is a zoning bylaw amendment, and I don't believe there's any test of a need for an application, and that's, in my experience, not given a whole lot of weight. It's more with respect to the actual policies that you have in place in your official plan and a test of conformity. Thank you.
Ms. Crowder?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosemuth. If I can just add to what Mr. Sharp is saying, the official plan, it's section E432, speaks to a variation not exceeding 1/10 of the permitted lot coverage, or variation to recognize coverage of existing lawful structures may be considered without an official plan amendment, provided section N3 of the plan is met. And N3 of the plan is the changing zone standards section. And it speaks to a number of matters such as cumulative impact on such matters as the environment, visual aesthetics, and lake character. The current situation with respect to lot coverage and amenity coverage area, impacts of decisions on future development in the township in terms of setting a negative precedence, habitable versus non-habitable space, setback from the lake, size of building not in compliance with the bylaw, whether the structure contains walls, buffering from the lake, buffering from neighboring properties, terrain and possible building locations, location of buildings on neighboring properties, visual impact, and impact on the natural shoreline. So it does not specify that someone needs to demonstrate an actual need for that additional coverage. It's more so that staff need to consider these provisions when making a recommendation, and considering the setbacks in place are compliant, considering the existing vegetative buffer, setbacks from neighboring properties and buffers between properties, staff have come to the conclusion that the additional coverage does meet the intent of the official plan, and the official plan does permit applications to come forward by way of minor variance or zoning bylaw amendment for that 11% on this lake, or 1/10 of the coverage permitted for any lake.
Thank you very much. Mr. Forrescue, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to make a comment?
I just wanted to piggyback off of the comments from Emily and or Ms. Crowder and Mr. Sharp. Wanted to bring up, it is heavily vegetated. It's all within the shoreline buffer, so those trees will not be removed. And it's very difficult. It's an elevated lot. The cottage will hardly be seen from the lake. And again, this is why I attributed the lot coverage to the cottage, so that my client could, and his family and his future family could enjoy and have space to enjoy the cottage and minimize the amount of area for the single-story boathouse. I do a lot of design work in the area, and I'm very familiar and fond of the area, and I want to be a steward of the lake as well, and make sure that the impact that we impose onto the lakes is minimal as possible. So making sure that all of the lot coverage is attributed to the cottage that is behind a huge vegetation line was precedent for me. Not making the boathouse large and impactful to the lake. And we didn't have to, but we also had an environmental study completed for that area to make sure that fish habitat and build times were adhered to. So we went above and beyond for this application because we know of development and impact on the environment, etc. And when I did talk to the Buckco family, it was very interesting to hear, because they hardly talked about this application. They talked about all the other developments around the bay. And I don't necessarily agree with any of the other things that have gone on, but we were supposed to have a discussion about this application specifically, and not what else is going on in the bay. As far as I'm concerned, we're going through the necessary steps and we're looking after the environment. So that's all I have to say about that.
Councillor Kent, you have your hand up for a question?
Yes, I want to ask if I've got some feedback from some of the people who are not on the phone, the Butgos and some others that I'd like to relay, which I think is important. The question is, do you want me to wait till comments? Because it's more of a comment.
Yeah, let's wait till then. Do we have any more questions? Because I think we're getting close. Councillor Nishikawa.
I just, what would the lot percentage be? We're adding, I'm sorry, I might be wrong. What size the pergola is and, for instance, yeah, I just want to know what would the lot coverage be if that was a roofed?
Ms. Crowder.
Through you, Chair Bosemuth, I'm just going to open up my file here so I can get you an exact number. Just bear with me a moment. So the pergola, the number I have, the pergola is 394 square feet in size. So we'll just do some math here. Thank you. Through you, Chair Bosemuth, the coverage, if the pergola were to be roofed, would be 12.1% within 200 feet of the high water mark.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Kent, that zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 06/24 be approved subject to a revision in the amending bylaw permitting only an unroofed and unenclosed pergola. Do we have any discussions, comments? I think Councillor Kent, you have one.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead. Yep.
I want to go back to what I think is the issue that Councillor Nishikawa is addressing, and it's been top of mind for me for since the last meeting. I would back up and say that after the last meeting, I immediately called Councillor Bosemuth as head of planning committee and said, explain to me the history on this 10 to 11%. And I'm a new councillor, okay? And I understand 10% is the bylaw, 11% is the OP, and there's an inconsistency. It has become precedent, in my opinion, based on what I've heard and watched over the last year, that people feel that they have a free right to get up to 11%. And if that's the case, there should be a conformity between the two plans. Okay, I would say that some of the neighbors got together, when they finally understood the issue, and I said, listen, didn't understand the issue either. When they finally understood the issue, that they weren't asking, they were asking for extra coverage, but they were actually allowed to have the extra coverage per the 11%. They were very upset because this whole process had caused a huge amount of discord in the Bay. There were a bunch of people objecting to a property. It was a small bay, it's overcrowded. These are a new neighbor, they don't even know the person yet, and now they're having uncomfortable and unpleasant conversations. So I guess my issue is, if that's the case where the OP overrides the 10%, and maybe I'm getting these facts wrong perhaps, but if the OP overrides the 10%, and I would say that I didn't understand it, and neither do 99% of the applicants and people who are in the community. Okay, so the community doesn't understand that. It's causing a lot more problems than it's creating. So I'm just going to make a point that, in this particular case, I don't think there's been any need established here for the extra 10%, apart from the fact that the guy wants a bigger cottage. And in addition, the inconsistency in the rules has created a amount of discord that I think we as council need to deal with over the next, as we deal with the bylaw. And I just wanted to communicate that on behalf of the Butgos and a bunch of other constituents who specifically spoke to me, and I appreciated and understood. They called me specifically because at the last meeting, I made a comment on this 10%. So that's why I'm involved and have a strong opinion on the subject. Thank you.
Mr. Sharp.
Through you, Chair Bosworth, I don't want to speak out of turn, so if you're looking for me to provide some feedback, I certainly can.
Yep, no, that's what I'm looking for.
But I think, you know, again, the official plan is quite clear in this case that lot coverage increases can be considered up to 11% within an official plan amendment. As I explained previously, I think that policy over the years has been quite beneficial in that it has prevented a creep towards higher lot coverage amounts. If that policy didn't exist, what would prevent an individual from applying for 12, 13, 14, 15? At what point would it end? And I think we've been quite consistent over the years in holding people to that standard. And I just want to caution a committee that with respect to the numerical amount of relief, whether it be, you know, expressed as feet, square feet, a percentage, what really matters at the end of the day is the impact, and in the case of a zoning bylaw amendment, conformity with the official plan and whether it meets the intent of the policies. As Mr. Pink had explained earlier, the province has set up the planning process in Ontario to allow individuals to apply, as Mr. Forshu has done. And that's just how the process has been set up. People have the ability to apply. There's nothing that staff or council can do about that. Thank you.
Councillor Kent, supplementary.
Yeah, just one supplementary. If that, yes, thank you. And through you. If that's the case, however, I think we need to find a better way of communicating that to the public. Because I would say that this caused a huge amount of discord in the Bay. And I think this has been repeated in multiple circumstances around the community where there's this secret 10 to 11%, which is the way the public view this. And if we can do a better job communicating it, they might not have objected and had these unpleasant conversations with the neighbors. So I would suggest that it's something we could improve through better communication with the public.
Mr. Forsky, I see you have your hand up, but we are in debate now, and unless I get an explicit question for you, I'm not going to respond to that. Ms. Crowder and then Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Chair Bosenworth, for indulging. I just wanted to add to Mr. Sharp's comments. I do think that it is important that it's made aware that applications for 11% coverage are not just automatically okayed by the planning staff. We do look at each property specifically, and there are properties where we go to and, you know, the vegetative buffer may be in a really undesirable state where 11% may have a really big impact on the property. And so, you know, or they're asking for that additional coverage to be right on the boathouse on the lake. It's a bit of a different situation, and each property is evaluated by its specific merits. But, you know, those applications are looked at individually and aren't necessarily just okayed when they come to our desk.
Councillor Nishikawa, then Councillor Burry.
Thank you. Through you to you. I will not be supporting this application unless the pergola is removed from the application. The whole walks like a duck, all that kind of stuff comes to mind. I'm not going to suggest that this particular property owner does anything, but somebody down the road will. That's just been my experience, and we see this lots where things all of a sudden pop up, and how to deal with it. So I can't support this application with, and I have to equate that giving additional lot coverage includes that pergola. Whatever way the mechanics or the math is done, no, we're saying we're only going to deal with it in the the cottage as I think the pergola is my problem and I don't want to see that left in the application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burry.
Thank you and through you, but this was not rehearsed. My question is, and not suggesting that this particular applicant is going to do anything nefarious. What if the pergola is covered? That takes the coverage to 12.1%, I think Mr. Sharp said to us. What are the ramifications? And seeing our chief bylaw officer coming to the table, maybe I can direct the question to him. What are our ramifications and remedies in a case that this might happen?
Mr. Kennedy.
Through the chair, it simply becomes an enforcement issue under the zoning bylaws. So if they are over their permitted lot coverage, a normal case would just be a notice to the property owner to inform them that they have now gone over their lot coverage and they need to rectify it. How they do that is entirely up to them. If they wish to try and come back to planning committee to get extra relief, that's their right, or by any other means of simply removing whatever the roof structure would be. If there is no compliance, the only thing that we can do is lay charges under the Provincial Offences Act for whatever sections are contravened under the zoning bylaw.
Supplemental. I have a supplemental on that topic. Is there any vehicle for us forcing them to remove the roof?
Through the chair, not that I'm aware of, to be quite honest with you. If they put the roof up and we continually charge them, it essentially just becomes a monetary penalty over and over again. The good thing with the Planning Act is that on any subsequent infraction, it becomes from the first date of conviction, it becomes a $10,000 penalty per day. So you're looking at $70,000 per day on a penalty. And with the way the courts work and the speed that the courts work, you're probably getting into the millions of dollars quite quickly. With one single adjournment of 2 months, you're looking at 60 days. So you can do the quick math on 70,000 a week for that. So that's where the kind of the bigger hammer comes in, is when we have this subsequent offenses under the Planning Act.
Thank you for that information. Very enlightening. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I think I could support Councillor Nishikawa with the 11% without the pergola. From the lake, if you look at those pictures, it looks like a roofed area. And that with the framing coming down, people will think it's maybe that 12.1. So, and maybe a future owner would be happy not to have a pergola and a $70,000 a week fine for covering it. So I will not be supporting it with a pergola.
Do we have any more comments or questions from Mitty? I've read the resolution and call the vote. All those in favor? Can you count, please? Do I have to vote? No? Can I vote later?
Just wonder if
Okay. Oh, well, I'll call it again because I just clarifying it. All those in favor? How many is that? Oh, 5. All those opposed? 5. That is defeated. Thank you very much. Now, our next item is some new business. And this is a discussion on the noise bylaw, and it is brought to us by Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'll begin by informing everyone that I did talk in length to Councillor Zavitz on this subject, and we went back and forth on it. And I just decided, or we decided, that it would come as a discussion point to a proposal rather than a resolution. We did have a resolution prepared, but after talking to staff, we thought the best course would be to proceed the way we're proceeding. So Councillor Zavitz may want to add some comments after. But for background, in 2005, to reduce and control noise, council approved a bylaw. This bylaw has not been reviewed or updated since 2005. And it actually mentions the OPP in it. It doesn't mention bylaw enforcement from the township. You all may recall that the actual bylaw that we have in place, the crux of it is that it's only enforced in the night, evening to the morning. So in a residential area, it's from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. From a waterfront area, residential, it's from 9 to 7 a.m. And from rural area, it's 6 to 9 a.m. 6 p.m. So during the short-term rental accommodations public meetings, I heard a number of times, and it was making loud and clear that many viewed unregulated daytime noise to be one of the most impactful actions, which significantly spoils their Muskoka experience or the experience of their property. We will all recall that last fall we reprioritized and brought a noise bylaw up on the priority list, second to the short-term rentals. Assuming that the council decides a path forward to reduce and control the bad behavior of a few short-term rental businesses sometime, I don't think we'll get that done sometime, on my estimate is sometime in the spring of 2025. Also, given our experience with how long it takes to update a bylaw, and as CEO Hammond pointed out to me, is we can write that bylaw pretty quick, but we got to bring the public along on it. So it'll be many months. So I'm just assuming or guessing that we won't see anything possibly on a noise bylaw improvement or a change until 2026, which is a long time from now. I'm thinking we must not wait and we need something started as soon as we can on it. I did discuss with staff, both Mr. Pink and Mr. Hammond, CEO Hammond, the possibilities of beginning the noise bylaw, and we're adding nuisance to that at the suggestion of Mr. Zavitz or Councillor Zavitz. Bylaw update to the process to begin in 2024, i.e. let's get the quick bylaw written up, which if it is that quick, and sort of start the process so that possibly you could have something by the time early or mid 2025. So through the chair to CEO Hammond, I asked that he summarize his and maybe Mr. Pink's opinion on what we could do in 2024.
Councillor Zavitz, before I go on, do you have any comments in addition to Councillor Edwards?
Yes, and thank you very much for that, and through you. Certainly echoing what the good councillor has indicated, and not trying to presuppose what staff will be coming back to us with from the listening sessions with the public on the short-term rental over the last 60 days. It almost feels like we're, cart, horse, chicken, egg. If we have a noise and nuisance bylaw, and we heard from numerous people throughout all the input that we've been getting, is that why don't we simply exercise the bylaws that we have in place to an extent? And I know that's undersimplifying the scenario, but I guess what we're looking for here would be in concert with the short-term rental suggestions coming forward, that noise and nuisance bylaw is vital to this place. And it's hard to look a constituent in the eye and suggest that, in fact, we do that. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from our good CAO. Thank you.
Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, and I'm wondering if it would certainly help me to understand the scope of what we're talking about before we get into figuring out how long and what the process looks like, because I'm not sure. I mean, other than just extending the hours, are we talking about redefining nuisance, redefining noise, accepting construction sounds, or is it as simple? Are you just proposing taking what we have now and changing the hours?
Councillor Roberts.
No, not at all. With a bylaw was written in 2005 and hasn't been looked at since, there's things have changed. I did approach Mr. Kennedy to find out if he had any measurement of how many complaints we do get for daytime, but they do not track that. And I know that the bylaw, it has exemptions, the things you're talking about right now, but that's almost almost 20 years old. So it has to be a wholesome review of the whole bylaw, just not the hours. All right.
Director Pink, do you have any comments on this?
I don't know if this is, really the right avenue to dive into the short-term rental details or even the noise bylaw itself details. Just quickly to Councillor Zavitz's comments, I do appreciate that there were a lot of comments that why don't we just enforce and update the bylaws we have. Keep in mind that we started studying the short-term rental issue, I believe it was in 2016, and that was actually the prime finding of the original steering committee was to update bylaws, enhance bylaw enforcement staff, and enforce our bylaws. And we have done that extensively in the last 5-10 years, and the concerns from the community still continue. So I don't think you want to lose sight of that. Again, I don't think this is the right time to dive into what could be updated in the noise bylaw. That's certainly one that's still left to update. I think this is more a discussion around timing, but I look to Councillor Roberts for that, but that's my understanding. And in that regard, I completely appreciate the desire to want to update bylaws as efficiently and as quickly as possible. And of course, our seasonality here really impacts that. We want to have that in place for the summertime. But I think, again, we need to be cognizant. We've updated the fireworks bylaw, dark sky bylaw, tree and site bylaw. A few of those I considered more technical refreshments. Refreshments the right word, but an update of those. And they each took, I think, over a year and had extensive public engagement. And I think sitting here in March, just discussing whether we should in fact open it up. I don't think the noise bylaw really is going to be able to be updated in time for the 2024 summer. I think there will be a lot of public engagement, a lot of debate on that. What I can say, though, is we are quite well along the way of the short-term rental bylaw. These processes tend to ebb and flow with workloads. And right now, this is one of the busier times when staff is reviewing, Mr. Kennedy, correct me, but I think well over 100, 200 submissions. And we will be coming back to you as directed with a summary of those submissions and recommendations for the bylaw. Once that work is done, likely our busy summer season will start. But I think shortly thereafter, hopefully if things stay manageable, perhaps later summer or in fall, we can certainly, if the short-term rental process is under control, I think staff would have the resources to start considering an update to the noise bylaw over this coming fall and winter, hopefully for a 2025 rollout. So I don't know if that sort of perspective on timelines and resources is helpful. I'm happy to go into further detail or answer any further questions.
Councilor Nishikawa.
So I look around the room and my only pal over in the corner there, through you to anybody that wants to listen. Honestly, and David's actually right. I mean, we've had these conversations for years and long before short-term rentals were a consideration. And it's actually, I gotta say, and including myself, sometimes I might turn my music up loud. And I live here. Like I'm not, I don't think this is just about short-term rentals. It's a much, much bigger picture. And in fact, where we got sort of stuck was the noise decibel discussions, right? Like you had to have a piece of equipment running around with you to determine if they were over a certain decibel and all of it's very, very complicated. And, it would be better to be good neighbors, I guess, and for your neighbor to pick up the phone and say, can you just, it has worked. I've seen that work, but I also suggest that, again, I don't think we can rush this, but because we've had many, many struggles trying to do this over the years, and how do you measure and how do you determine that this is offensive or that sort of thing? And we got a lot on our plate. Just saying. Thank you.
Any further comments on this? Councillor Roberts, are you satisfied with the extent of the discussion we've had?
I'm satisfied, just the point that the discussion of the decibels and that would all come, that'll all come out when staff review it. So it's more just a timing thing. And the essence here is if we can get it started in 2024, is that better? I don't like a cacao. We get it started in 2024, then we'll have some sort of hope to get something in place by 2025. Whether it's early 2025, mid or end, that's my point. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to Councillor Roberts.
Sorry, so what I heard was that workload permitting from staff, and there's no surprises that they possibly could begin something in the early fall. Is that what I heard, Mr. Pink? Thank you.
Director Pink.
Thank you, yes, through you. Certainly, I can never, I guess, commit to what the summer will bring. I mean, last year we received a large number of complaints, and I think we heard earlier in this meeting a desire to do a periodic proactive enforcement and that sort of thing. But I think certainly if short-term rental process moves relatively smoothly, I could certainly, our goal could certainly look to bring back a report on the noise bylaw and have a very good discussion about what we do want to dive into, all those issues that we've heard, decibels, daytime noise, et cetera. I think that's the proper way to initiate that process.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to the next item. Ontario Land Tribunal status updates. I believe that will be you, Director Pink.
Just again, nothing to update, just whether any councillors have a question on any existing or new ongoing appeal process. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none. Yeah. Are we winning? Director Pink, good question. Boy, wide open question.
Regarding appeals or in life, I like to think we generally always do fairly well. Like I said, we've managed to avoid any lengthy full hearings lately. Most matters have we've been able to settle, and through compromise, I think good outcomes have been achieved.
All right, I think we better call this meeting to an adjournment. There is nothing more on our agenda, so I will now read the final adjournment here, or the resolution. Moved by Councillor Mazin, seconded by Councillor Burry. We've got a laugh bug going around here. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting adjourn at 11:49 a.m. The next regular Planning Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, April the 11th, 2024 at 9 a.m. via electronically and in-person hybrid format from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in beautiful downtown Port Carling, Ontario. I imagine there's no discussion on that, so I call a vote. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. That is carried.